to the Gump Report, baby.
It's time. We've already gone through Royal Rumble, and I made the promise I was going to do a Gump Report on this. As you see the title, who is the real head of the table? Now, before I get started, I want to make this so clear. There's a very strong chance this is not going to happen. A very strong chance that none of this will happen. This will only be about Sami Zayn. But due to the fact it's 95% probably going to be about Sami, what about that 5%? 95, 5. We're here. This is my conspiracy theory, which is being flipped. What happens if this is not 100% about Sami? Never was 100% about Sami. Even though it will happen with Sami. He will get his comeuppance when it comes to Roman Reigns. He will. But this is not about that. This is not about becomes Universal Champion. This is about what happens if, and I repeat, if this was true. Who is the true head of the table? Because we've had this bloodline for almost 2 years easily. More than 2 years. Roman comes back after, as you guys remember, when the pandemic hit, Roman, who has an immunity deficiency due to the fact of him having pretty much leukemia, he couldn't be around anyone. If he got sick, he could have easily died because his immune system is very weak compared to other people due to the fact of chemotherapy. So he's now gone up against he's done chemotherapy twice. He has beaten leukemia twice. He's back, safe, sound, healthy. But when he was gone and he came back, he did a complete 180 on his character. And instead of staying a face, which he was doing nothing with, he just flipped the script and became a heel, which everybody loved for a good amount of time before it started getting really tiresome until he started the Bloodline storyline. Now, Jay was the only one there because Jimmy was injured. I believe he had an ACL tear, a pretty nasty one, so it took him time to heal. So he worked with Jay. He worked with Paul Heyman. He put Jay through hell and made him his right-hand man until Jimmy came back. And then both those boys managed to get not just the SmackDown, but the Raw titles. And now they are the longest running Raw and SmackDown, or in a case, WWE champions for the tag division in recent memory. It's been a long time since anybody held both titles from both brands longer than a year and a half. They've broken it. So they're the longest running now next to New Day and Demolition. Then they brought in Solo Sikoa. The Enforcer. Sami Zayn came in. Brought that in, which made everyone go insane for the Bloodline. That's how over it is. But what if, in my conspiracy, that yes, this was originally meant for Roman to go up against The Rock by WrestleMania, and also for a Sami Zayn to get over to be the top face. Roman loses the Universal title, and then they move on. At one point, people thought, well, Sami and Kevin Owens should go after the tag titles, and that would make things exonerated for Kevin trying to be there for his friend. But what happened if this is not about that? What happened if, this is what I believe is going to happen because of all the changes that's happened next to Vince McMahon. And I saw what JD said on how he felt about the Royal Rumble. And I do agree, there was a lot of stuff in there that just didn't make a lot of sense. But what happened if we're doing this? Let's say, going off of Royal Rumble right now, that Jay does not want to do anything with Jimmy or Solo or pretty much Roman Reigns. He is conflicted. We got Sami Zayn, who is working with Kevin Owens, where everyone is thinking that Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and a possible Jey Uso will be like this. You have the Jey Uso, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn versus Solo Sikoa versus his own brother and you got Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, and Jey Uso versus his younger brother, Solo Sikoa, and his twin brother, Jey Uso, along with Roman Reigns. That's what people are wondering. That's what people want. So it will go into WrestleMania where Sami Zayn will go up against Roman Reigns. That's what people will think. But I don't think so. This is what I think is going to happen, if my story is correct. Let's say this, that this story that we had with the right-hand man, the prime time of Jey Uso, has been slowly building without anyone noticing to the point where it's about to be this. Let's say he does go on the side of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Let's say by not WrestleMania, but Elimination Chamber, that we get a match finally between a Roman Reigns and a Sami Zayn. And that will be for the Universal title. Because the way they're acting, they don't want to keep both titles separate anymore. I think they want to split them up again, which I don't know if that's the wisest thing because you don't really have a great amount of work in both rosters. But let's say they do it. And let's say that Sami Zayn, who is been a SmackDown guy, he goes after the Universal title and he wins. That means Sami Zayn becomes Universal Champion for SmackDown. But since Kevin Owens is from Raw, you're going to have Raw pretty much have to have their own title. So Roman Reigns will now go up against Kevin Owens to get the WWE title away from before WrestleMania. Let's say it's not going to be at WrestleMania. It is before WrestleMania. It is well before then. On maybe a episode of Raw. I know not many want to hear that, but let's say it is before that. And then a Roman Reigns loses because a Jey Uso is in by the side of Jimmy, who Jimmy is not functioning correctly. Yes, he's working with his younger brother Solo, but he's not right. He's angry. He's frustrated because his twin isn't with him because, as you know, Jey and Jimmy, a lot of times they can't function without each other. They need to work properly together. And Jey has learned while working with Roman how to function correctly. But Jimmy has not. And even though he's working with their younger brother Solo, he's still not working right. So they have not functioned correctly. They're angry. Solo is now angry because Jimmy's not functioning correctly. He's blaming Jimmy, who is angry that Jay's not there. So, because of this misfunction in the family, you see Roman lose the WWE title to a Kevin Owens, who now is a champ of Raw. Sami Zayn is a champ of SmackDown. Roman, who is the head of the table right now, clearly is angry. He's lost both titles. Jey is not with the family. And he looked like he can't get the job done. And this is somewhere between WrestleMania and Elimination Chamber. This happens. But this is my thought, my story, that if it actually was true, would be the most well-developed ever thought of and would compensate for what has happened. Because if, and I say this if The Rock is not going to be at WrestleMania, and if they're going to make Sami Zayn drop that title early, well, not drop the title early, but basically get the title from a Roman Reigns before WrestleMania, this will not be about a title. This will be about who leads the bloodline. Because the bloodline storyline has been the most well-developed story that we've seen in years from WWE. It's going to culminate in coming back to square one. When Roman Reigns came back and he decided in this new persona of his new, I am the head of our family. I make the money. I have been on the top. No one can do what I can do. That leads him right back to Jey Uso, who is the first to be brought into the bloodline. He will be the last one that he will deal with. Because this is what's going to happen. I believe what happened. When we're maybe 3 weeks to a month before WrestleMania, Jey approaches the bloodline. Because right now, the bloodline is arguing between each other in the ring a lot. And then Jey comes out with his own music. in his own different ring attire. He's not looking like Jimmy. He's not looking like a Sokoa. He's not looking like Roman Reigns. He looks completely different, totally separate. He comes out, walks up to them. They're ready to fight with him because he's been fighting with him for a while now. He's worked with Kevin. He's worked with Sammy, but he's by himself. He went into the ring and he said, hold it, hold it. And he's holding the mic. Hold it. I know you want to fight. No, we ain't fighting. I'm not fighting you. And Roman's ready to break it, and then Jimmy's holding him. He says, no. And Jimmy grabs the mic and said, what the hell you doing here? You ain't family anymore. He says, yes, I am. I'm your family. I'm your family, Solo. Our baby brother. And our little cousin who's in there, who's younger than us. I'm his family too. I'm all y'all family. He said, and Roman says, really, if you all are family, why'd you go and work with Kevin? Why'd you go and work with Sammy? Why'd you turn on the bloodline? He said, simple. Because the bloodline is wrong. Because when it comes down to it, you are not the true leader of the bloodline. Because as it comes down to it, our family would have never acted the way you have been acting. You made me go through hell. You didn't have to do that. Then you made my brother, your cousin, you choked his ass out over 2 years ago and made me say I quit when you didn't need to do that. You know I was always in your corner. You know he was in your corner. Then what did you do to Solo? And let's say by this time, he's nailed Solo. Solo was already feeling angry about things because of Jay leaving. But let's say that Roman nails him more than a few times, either accidentally or on purpose, which was questionable. He says about his younger brother Solo. He says, what did you do to our younger brother Solo? What did you do? You nailed him twice for no apparent reason other than nailing him twice and saying you were sorry. That was bull and you know it. That was shit. You lied and I know you lied. That's the reason why when I see this situation, you're not the true head of the table. You're not the true head of our family. Hell, when all this started, when it came to Sammy had always been in our corner. Sammy has taken bullets for us. But you kept screwing with him on purpose. That was not about Kevin. It was not about Kevin. Never about Kevin. It was about how incredibly over. How everyone loved Sammy. How I loved Sammy. How Jay loved Sammy. And Solo, who's always been decisive, never hated him. And I know you didn't. And he's saying, he's looking right dead in his face. I know you didn't hate him. Because he was your friend too. He was family to us. And he's family to me still. And guess what? Every time when we wrestled you, you know what he told me every time when we were about to go out? Because Kevin said, we need to destroy you. We need to destroy you. And as we go, he always hold me back. And he says, wait. Remember, they're still your family. Don't kill him, man. He puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, they're our enemy. He says, no, they just don't understand that Roman's making things wrong. And he told me this. He told me that you are still my family. That shows how much he's loyal to the bloodline, even after the bloodline is broken up and he's been by my side, where he doesn't have to say nothing about any of you. He still says, don't be so hard on them. Because they're still your family. That's the reason why. He's family. He is Sammy Uso 100. And he says this. And what makes this so great, if this was real, what I'm saying here, he would say, at this point, I realize something. You're not the head of the table. He's pointing right at Roman. He's looking right at his twin and Solo. And he's going like this. You're not the head of the table. I know you're not the head of the table because you caused this on all of us. You decided that you want to control all of us. True head of the table isn't just somebody who takes charge. The true head of the table does not try just to control us, but to destroy us for his own gain and his own damn ego. That's what you got. I got no damn ego. He's got no damn ego. He's got no damn ego. Only you got the damn ego. So he says and walks right into his face. He says, you know what? You don't deserve to be the head of the table. You know who does? Me. And Roman steps back and laughs, says, why would you be the head of the table? You know why? It's simple. Because after all this has happened, after everything, when we wrestled, did I hit you? Did I hit you? Did I hit you? Did Sammy hit you? Did Sammy hit you? Did Sammy hit you? Kevin hit you because he hates you. But Sammy still respects you. Sammy still, and he's pointing at Sokoa. He's pointing at Jimmy. And then you. He hates you, Sammy. But he knows you're our cousin. My cousin. I still, even though I hate you, you're still my family. And he promised me he would never hurt you. He'll beat you in a match. Fairly. But he won't try to beat your ass down. He follows me. That's why I should be the head of the table. And at that moment, just as Roman says, let's see you be head of the table when I knock your head off your shoulders. You see Sammy, after he says that, as he's approaching Jay, you see Sammy coming out. He runs down to the ring. He jumps into the ring, and he stands in between them. And he says, puts his arms out. He says, no. And Jimmy's like, what? He grabs the mic and says, what are you doing? This ain't about you. And he's saying this about Sammy. And Sammy says, no, it isn't about me. But he's about to hurt your brother. He's about to hurt your brother. And he's your cousin. He doesn't need to do it. And this is Sami Zayn that's saying this. After he saw that Roman was about to come out and attack, and he ran out with no music on. He runs out, jumps between them, and puts his arms out trying to protect Jay. And he looks at Jimmy. He says simply, look at me. I'm not your family, but I care about you and I care about you. You're the bloodline. He loves you. He loves you. And crazy enough, and he looks at Roman. He says he still loves you even though you angered him. He's done everything he can not to hurt any of you because he loves you so damn much. I know I'm not blood, real blood. I know I'm just an honorary oos when I was here. But I knew this guy behind me, he had good in him. And even though he hated and despised me, I worked hard to prove that there was a reason why there was an issue. And I helped him to see himself. And he is a true member of your family because he wants to do everything he can to protect you, to love you. He's the true leader of your family. And he's pointing at Jey Uso. And of course, Roman can't stand it. He decks Sammy. Then he attacks a Jey who doesn't even try to hit him. He pounds on him. He pounds on him. Then Sammy gets back up, grabs Roman, starts hitting him back. But Jey realizes, can't do that. He grabs Sammy, who instinctively tried to attack. And he did. He grabbed him and says, no, don't do it. Stop. Don't do it. He stops him. He stops him. And at that point, Jimmy and Sikoa are watching, but they don't interact. He grabs the mic, and this is Jey. He says, we ain't going to do this. I don't want to fight you like this. We had a match once before. We had a match for who is who, to see if I was better than you. It's time to do that match again. WrestleMania, another I Quit match, but this time it's for see who is the head of the damn table. WrestleMania rolls around. They had the I Quit match. And Jey wins the I Quit match. And he, with their dad Rikishi, and with Roman's own father, after it's all over, they're all lined up. They anoint Jey as the new head of the table, where Roman must have the decision, to decide to stick with the bloodline, or he has to go off on his own. And you can even throw The Rock in there. He doesn't even have to wrestle. He just has to be there as well. This is what I think could happen. Now, do I believe it will happen? Hell no. There's no way. This is probably still about Sami. And yes, Jay will have a part in building Sami up to WrestleMania, possibly WrestleMania, to deal with Roman if The Rock is not going to be there. Because, honestly, it's going to be about The Rock. If it's not about The Rock, it's got to be about Sami. Because even though Cody needs to get the title, if he's not going up against Roman, and, well, let me give it to you like this. I know what JD said about what's going on with Cody Rhodes, and he's kind of right. Because Cody Rhodes is going to be screwed now. Because he should be here, but he's not. Sami's here. So if Sami is going up against Roman, if I had to book it, because Roman will have to face Sami down the line eventually. Now, maybe he'll face him at the Elimination Chamber so they can get rid of this, so when they go over to WrestleMania, then Cody will have his moment. Because there's a very strong possibility that the best option that WWE and Triple H, which I think isn't totally Triple H, because even though I said the show was an 8.5, there's a good chance that Vince was involved in it. Because of the way it was acting. I did say there were several things that didn't make a lot of sense. So it's a possibility what's going to happen. By Elimination Chamber, we're going to have Roman Reigns go up against Sami Zayn for the Universal title. He'll lose. There's no way he's going to win. And then they'll transition from that for him to go up against the Usos with Kevin Owens, where Jimmy will eventually tag back up with Jay. Jay will no longer be conflicted, and he will start working with Jimmy again. And they will have to face Kevin and Sami. But they got to get rid of that first. So I believe that's going to happen, and there's a very strong possibility that by WrestleMania, you will see the Usos versus Kevin and Sami Zayn for the tag championships, whether it be SmackDown, Raw, Universal, which is unified titles, doesn't matter. And then they will do Roman versus Cody Rhodes. But if they can't get The Rock, and they really want to do something special with Cody, where, yes, he could go up against Sami Zayn, who is a much more stronger face than him, but it would make some sense. Cody coming back, working with the most strongest face they have. Yes, not everybody would be happy to see Cody beat Sami, but they could do that, and then they can transition Cody into a heel just a little bit afterward. Yes, it won't be great, but it will make sense. Because he's kind of been jaded due to the fact of how things worked in WWE. That he worked his ass off to come back. He came back, then he got hurt. He came back again, and the fans are not cheering like they should because he's there for his dad and himself. So, doing this against Sami, he wins against Sami after WrestleMania. Then, the fans are still not into him, but they're into Sami. He turns heel. He destroys Sami. He becomes the most hated heel next to Roman Reigns because Sami just got destroyed by Cody Rhodes. That would probably be the best case scenario. But if it wasn't, and the story that I just came up with could be where they're generally going because they may not have The Rock, this would be the most craziest type of storyline that anyone has seen that will not involve either title. Neither Universal or WWE. It will be the most strongest story we've had in a decade. In a decade, where it would flip from the time Roman came back due to the fact of one having cancer. That was just before the pandemic. Then after he came back, once he got back from cancer, had to leave because of the pandemic. Then came back, then destroyed everyone, started the bloodline, led all the way to Sami Uso, which in between that, he had to convince Jay, who had to beat him in several matches, including a high quit, where he had to literally say I quit because of his brother Jay being choked out by his own cousin. This will lead right back to square one, where he has to face the fact that he's not the head of the table, that he's not as great as he thinks, he's full of himself. And now the very first person he brought into the bloodline just beat his ass and became the new head of the table that not only Solo respects, Jimmy respects, hell, Sammy being brought in, finally making Sammy Uso a real member, his own father, and that is Roman's father, has to tell him, submit or leave the family. How would that be a twist? But this is just me. I hope you enjoyed this.
Gump Report.
Please give me a comment below. I do not know if I'm going to do a full episode of Raw. I don't know. I'm going to watch Raw to see what's going to happen due to the fact of what happened with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. So I don't know. I'll probably just talk about what I thought of the segment with Roman, because that's the only thing I'm going to care about. Peace.